A billionaire called a waitress stupid over a cup of coffee, but he had no idea those 5 seconds would cost him $3.5 billion. The restaurant inside the Four Seasons in Charleston, South Carolina was the kind of place where everything gleamed. Marble floors polished to perfection, soft jazz in the background, and the faint smell of roasted coffee beans floating through the air. Every table was set like a magazine cover, and every waiter moved with the kind of grace that said, "Don't mess up." At table 9 sat Preston Whitmore, the billionaire CEO of Whitmore Dynamics, a man whose name carried both respect and fear. He was known for running his empire with an iron fist, and for believing that money gave him the right to demand perfection from everyone, especially those who served him. He sat tapping his Mont Blanc pen against the table, glancing at his gold watch every few seconds. Across from him were 2 associates from Los Angeles, both too afraid to speak. Preston's voice finally cut through the air. "Where's my coffee?" "It's been 12 minutes, he snapped, eyes darting toward the counter. The young waitress, Danielle Brooks, hurried over. Her apron was slightly wrinkled, her hair tied back in a neat bun, and a look of exhaustion behind her polite smile. She'd been working since 5 a.m., a double shift, but she never let her weariness show. "I'm so sorry, sir." The machine was recalibrating, but here you go. She carefully placed the steaming cup in front of him. Preston picked it up, took a sip, and frowned. "Is this supposed to be a latte?" "Yes, sir." "Double shot. Oat milk?" He slammed the cup down and the sound echoed across the dining room. Heads turned. "Do you even listen when people talk?" I said almond milk. "Almond? How hard is that?" His tone was sharp, cutting through the soft music like glass breaking. "You know what? Forget it. Just forget it. People like you never get anything right." Danielle froze. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. The color drained from her face. "Okay." A few customers stopped eating. One older woman whispered something to her husband. Preston leaned back, shaking his head with disgust. "Stupid." He muttered it low, but loud enough. The silence that followed was heavy. Danielle swallowed hard, managing a quiet, "I'm sorry, sir," before turning away. Her hands trembled as she picked up the tray. She kept her eyes forward, refusing to let a tear fall. At the far corner, a man in a gray suit set down his phone and watched the entire thing. Marcus Ellison, quiet and calm, had seen enough boardrooms to recognize real power and real weakness when he saw it. He didn't say a word, but his expression shifted, just slightly. Danielle disappeared into the kitchen. Preston went back to his meeting as if nothing had happened. But at that moment, something inside that restaurant changed, and Preston Whitmore's life would never be the same again. But Preston had no clue that his words just cost him more than money ever could. Marcus Ellison had seen arrogance before. It came with the territory. At 49, he'd sat across from world leaders, CEOs, and billionaires who thought they could buy dignity along with their assets. But this was different. He watched Danielle disappear behind the kitchen door, her shoulders tense and shaking slightly. The sound of Preston's voice still hung in the air, like a stain that wouldn't wash out. Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee and quietly slid his phone across the table. His assistant, Angela Ross, sitting opposite him, looked up with a raised brow. "You saw that?" he murmured. Angela nodded. Hard to miss. He just humiliated her in front of everyone. Marcus's gaze lingered on Preston, who was now laughing with his colleagues like nothing had happened. "That's Preston Whitmore for you," Angela whispered. "The man runs half the tech supply chain in the Southeast. People say he's a genius." Marcus set his cup down gently. "Genius doesn't excuse cruelty." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Marcus was the kind of man whose presence spoke louder than any outburst ever could. As Preston continued his meeting, Marcus pulled out a small notepad, the kind people didn't use anymore, and scribbled something down. Angela leaned slightly forward. "You're not thinking of—" "I am," Marcus said calmly. "That's the man our company's about to sign a merger with. The $3.5 billion deal Whitmore Dynamics has been chasing for a year." Angela blinked. "You're serious?" "I just saw how he treats someone with no power," Marcus replied, eyes fixed on Preston. "If that's how he acts in public, imagine what he's like behind closed doors." "I can't tie my company's name to that," Angela exhaled, unsure what to say. She'd been with Marcus long enough to know he didn't make decisions out of emotion, only principle. Preston's laughter carried across the room again. He threw his head back, brushing off whatever discomfort still lingered. He thought the moment was over, but Marcus knew better. As he stood to leave, he caught the maitre d's attention. "That waitress," he said quietly. "The one who was serving table 9? Is she all right?" The maitre d' gave a nervous nod. "She's shaken, sir. But she's still working." Marcus reached into his jacket and slipped a folded bill into the man's hand. "Make sure she takes a break, and tell her someone saw what happened." The maitre d' looked confused, but nodded. Marcus adjusted his cufflinks, straightened his tie, and glanced one last time at Preston. Still sitting there, still arrogant, still certain that his world revolved around him. As Marcus walked out into the humid Charleston air, Angela followed behind. "So what now?" she asked. He paused at the door, sunlight hitting his face just right. "Now," he said softly. "Now we see what a man's reputation is really worth." Angela said nothing. There was something about the way he spoke, calm, steady, certain, that made her realize Preston Whitmore's empire might just be standing on thinner ice than anyone thought. They climbed into the black SUV waiting by the curb. Marcus didn't check his phone. He didn't need to. He knew the next 24 hours would speak louder than anything he could say. But Marcus wasn't just another diner. He was holding the future of Preston's empire in his hands. The clock above the stove read 10:42 p.m. by the time Danielle Brooks got home. Her feet ached. Her shoulders felt like they were made of bricks. She dropped her purse on the kitchen counter and kicked off her shoes before even turning on the lights. Her small apartment sat above a laundromat in Savannah, Georgia, about 2 hours from Charleston. Rent wasn't cheap, but it was the only place that let her bring her 6-year-old son, Tyrese, and their old beagle, Lucky. From the bedroom came a soft, sleepy voice. "Mama? You home?" Danielle's exhaustion softened instantly. "Yeah, baby. Go back to sleep." But Tyrese padded into the living room anyway, clutching his faded Spider-Man blanket. "You smell like coffee," he said with a grin. Danielle laughed quietly. "That's because I spent the whole day serving it." He climbed into her lap, and for a moment, the world stopped spinning. The hotel, the embarrassment, the cruel words she'd tried to push out of her head. It all faded when he wrapped his little arms around her neck. "You okay, Mama?" he asked. His eyes, big and curious, searched hers. Danielle hesitated. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to tell him the world was fair. But honesty was one of the few things she had left. "I had a rough day, baby." Some people forget their manners when they got too much money. He frowned. "Did somebody be mean to you?" She smiled weakly. "A little bit, but I'm tougher than I look." Tyrese nodded, satisfied, and soon drifted back to sleep in her arms. She carried him to bed, kissed his forehead, and stood there a moment longer, staring at him. The reason she worked doubles, the reason she swallowed pride and pain with every shift. In the bathroom mirror, Danielle caught her reflection. Her tired eyes, the faint smudge of foundation that didn't hide the redness from earlier tears. She remembered Preston's voice echoing through that restaurant. "People like you never get anything right." She'd wanted to scream back. She wanted to say, "People like me keep people like you fed." But she didn't, because she couldn't afford to lose her job. Her phone buzzed. A message from her coworker, Shanice. "Girl, somebody recorded what happened with that man this morning. It's online. Already got like 10,000 views. Danielle froze. Her hands went cold. She opened the link and watched herself on screen. The moment she placed the cup, the moment he yelled, the moment she stood there swallowing every ounce of pride just to stay composed. The comments section was already exploding. That poor waitress. Why would he talk to her like that? She handled that like a queen. She scrolled and scrolled, her heart racing. Then she saw his name, Preston Whitmore. People were tagging his company, calling for boycotts, demanding apologies. Danielle didn't know whether to be scared or relieved. She hadn't wanted anyone to see her like that. But part of her, the part that had been humiliated, belittled, and talked down to her entire working life, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Vindicated. She turned off the phone, leaned back against the counter, and closed her eyes. "Lord," she whispered, "I didn't ask for this. But maybe this needed to happen." Outside, cars passed, dogs barked, and life went on like it always did. But inside that small apartment, something was shifting. Danielle wasn't just the tired waitress anymore. She was the woman the whole internet was suddenly rooting for, and she didn't even know it yet. But someone had captured that moment, and by morning, the world would see it too. By sunrise, the clip had already crossed 1 million views. The title on every repost read something like, "Billionaire CEO calls waitress stupid in front of everyone." Across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, strangers were outraged. Influencers dissected the footage, morning shows debated the arrogance of the elite, and people started using hashtags like #RespectIsFree and #StandWithDanielle. Danielle's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Her coworker Shanice called 3 times before she finally picked up. "Girl, you on Good Morning America? They're showing your face and everything." Danielle sat up on the couch, heart pounding. "You're kidding." "I'm serious. They blurred the name tag, but everyone knows it's you. And that man, Preston something? He's trending for all the wrong reasons." Danielle pressed a hand to her forehead. "Oh my God, I didn't ask for this, I know. But maybe it's about time somebody embarrassed him instead of the other way around." Across town, in a glass office tower that overlooked Charleston Harbor, Preston Whitmore sat in his leather chair staring at his phone. His assistant, Ben, stood beside him, pale as a ghost. "Sir, it's everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. Millions of views." Preston waved it off. "It'll blow over." "Internet people forget everything in 2 days." Ben didn't look convinced. "One of our board members just called. The PR team says reporters are waiting outside. CNBC wants a comment." Preston smirked. "We don't owe anyone a comment. Let the peasants bark. We've got a merger to finalize." But the internet wasn't barking. It was biting, hard. Sponsors started distancing themselves. A charity he'd supported quietly removed his name from their donor page. And inside the office, whispers spread faster than any official memo. Still, Preston refused to take it seriously. "They'll move on," he said, brushing dust from his suit jacket. "They always do." Meanwhile, in a corner office of a much quieter building in downtown Charleston, Marcus Ellison sat in a conference call with his legal team. "Marcus," one lawyer said carefully, "if you walk away from this deal, you're leaving billions on the table." Marcus leaned back, his face calm but firm. "Then so be it. I won't put my company's name next to a man who treats people like dirt. But the shareholders—" "I am the majority shareholder," Marcus interrupted, voice steady. "The merger is off." He ended the call before they could respond. For him, it wasn't about money. It was about something bigger. Integrity. He remembered the look on Danielle's face that morning. The quiet humiliation. The strength it took for her not to break down. That image stayed with him more than any profit margin ever could. By noon, Preston's office line was in chaos. Investors were calling. The press was circling. Employees were nervous. The headlines read, "Whitmore Dynamics faces backlash after viral restaurant incident. Potential $3.5 billion merger in jeopardy following CEO's outburst." Preston slammed his laptop shut. "Find out who leaked that video." Ben hesitated. "Sir, it wasn't leaked. A guest filmed it. It's public." Preston's nostrils flared. "Then find out who he is." "I'll have my lawyers handle it. But some things can't be handled with lawyers." At that same moment, Danielle was at the diner with Shanice, trying to eat pancakes while reporters stood outside taking photos through the window. "You're famous," Shanice whispered with a smirk. "I'm tired," Danielle said softly, "and scared. What if they twist it? What if they say I provoked him?" Shanice shook her head. "Girl, you were just doing your job. Don't let anyone make you feel small for that." Danielle sighed. She didn't want fame. She wanted peace, but that wasn't in the cards, not yet. That night, she got an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You don't know me, but I was there." It was signed Marcus Ellison. He wrote, "I saw what happened. You handled yourself with dignity. I just thought you should know. Your strength inspired a decision today. Keep your head high." Danielle reread the message twice. She didn't fully understand what he meant, but something in her heart told her this was far from over. But behind closed doors, one phone call would change everything. By the next morning, the story had gone from viral gossip to international news. Every business outlet from Forbes to Bloomberg was talking about it. The arrogant billionaire who mocked a waitress, the public backlash, and the sudden silence from Whitmore Dynamics. Inside Preston's sleek, all-glass headquarters in Charleston, the air was thick with tension. The boardroom, usually filled with polished confidence, now felt like a courtroom. Preston strode in wearing a charcoal suit, pretending nothing was wrong. "Let's get this meeting over with," he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. But his CFO, Carla Jennings, didn't even look up from her tablet. "Preston, we lost the Ellison merger." Preston's smirk vanished. "What do you mean, lost it?" "Marcus Ellison's team backed out at 6 a.m., she said flatly. "No explanation given. Just a formal notice of withdrawal." He blinked. "That can't be right." "Call him. We've been negotiating for months." Carla exchanged glances with the others. "We already tried. His office said the decision is final." Preston's jaw tightened. He can't just walk away from a $3.5 billion deal. Carla's tone turned sharp. He can, and he did. And now the media's connecting it to that video. Investors are furious. Our stock's already down 9% in 2 hours. Preston gripped the edge of the table. "This is ridiculous. It's a misunderstanding. People blow things out of proportion online." "Preston," another board member said quietly, "this isn't about social media. It's about reputation. You embarrassed yourself publicly, and by extension, you embarrassed us." The room fell silent. Only the faint hum of the air conditioning filled the space. Preston scanned the faces around him. Men and women who once hung on his every word, now refusing to meet his gaze. He leaned back slowly. "So what do you all suggest? That I go on some apology tour?" Carla didn't flinch. "You might have to start with the woman you called stupid." Preston laughed under his breath. "You can't be serious." Carla closed her tablet. "I am. Because if you don't, this company won't survive the quarter. Sponsors are dropping, the stock is crashing, and the Ellison Group just pulled their funding. You've got hours, not weeks, to fix this." The weight of her words hung heavy. Preston's arrogance flickered, just for a second. He stood abruptly. "Meeting's over." As he walked out, every eye followed him, not with respect, but with judgment. Out in the hallway, he loosened his tie, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: panic. His phone rang non-stop. Lawyers, PR heads, journalists, all demanding answers. By the time he reached his office, a new headline was already circulating. Whitmore Dynamics, $3.5 billion merger canceled amid CEO scandal. Preston sank into his chair, staring at the screen. His empire, the one he'd built with ruthless precision, was slipping through his fingers because of one moment, one word, one cup of coffee. Meanwhile, in a quiet cafe across town, Marcus Ellison watched the fallout unfold from his laptop. His assistant, Angela, set down a cup beside him. "You sure about this, Marcus?" "He's bleeding out there," Marcus nodded. "He brought it on himself. The world doesn't need another powerful man who thinks humility is beneath him." Angela sipped her drink. "Think he'll learn anything from it?" Marcus gave a small smile. "That depends on what kind of man he really is when the cameras go away." Back at his office, Preston called his PR head. "We'll donate to charity. Issue a statement about workplace equality or whatever people want to hear." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Sir, it's too late for that. People saw who you are. They don't want a statement. They want change." Preston slammed his fist on the desk. "I am change. I built this company from nothing." The line went silent. Then the PR director said softly, "Maybe that's the problem." For the first time in a long time, Preston felt something unfamiliar pressing against his chest. Guilt. He rubbed his temples and stared out the window at the skyline that suddenly looked less like a symbol of power and more like a wall closing in. He replayed the moment in his head, the coffee, the look on Danielle's face, the way everyone had stopped moving when he said that word. Stupid. He whispered it now, almost afraid of his own echo. It wasn't the insult that ruined him, it was the truth behind it. That somewhere along the way, he'd started believing other people were beneath him. But when pride burns everything down, all that's left is what you do next. 2 days later, Preston's name was on every screen in America. His company stock had fallen another 12%. His lawyers stopped returning calls, and his board was quietly discussing leadership restructuring. He sat alone in his penthouse, watching the muted news coverage. Every clip was the same. The moment he slammed the coffee cup down, the way Danielle flinched, the word that had slipped so easily from his mouth. He hated hearing it, but he couldn't stop replaying it. For years, Preston believed that success excused behavior, that if you were powerful enough, people would overlook arrogance. But now, for the first time, he was realizing that money couldn't drown out truth. His phone buzzed, a text from his assistant, Ben. "Sir, the PR team says an apology video might help. Maybe reach out to the waitress directly." Preston stared at the message for a long time. He didn't want to, but deep down, he knew this wasn't just about saving his company anymore. It was about saving whatever was left of himself. He took a breath and called the hotel. After a few redirects, he finally got a number. That evening, Danielle was finishing a shift at the same restaurant when her manager approached her. "Someone's asking for you," he said awkwardly. She turned and froze. Standing near the entrance, dressed in a dark suit with no entourage, no cameras, no arrogance this time, was Preston Whitmore. The room went quiet again, just like it had the day everything began. Danielle's first instinct was to walk away, but something in his face, the weariness, the defeat, made her stop. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Miss Brooks, I owe you an apology." She didn't say a word. She just looked at him, waiting. "I said things that were cruel and uncalled for," he continued, struggling to find words that didn't sound rehearsed. "You didn't deserve that. No one does. I thought I was showing strength, but really, I was showing weakness." Danielle crossed her arms. "You think an apology fixes that?" Preston swallowed. "No, I don't. But I wanted to say it anyway." The silence stretched. A few waiters nearby pretended to clean tables, trying to listen. Danielle finally spoke. "Do you know what it's like to work yourself to exhaustion, just to have someone look you in the eye and treat you like you're nothing?" Preston's gaze dropped. "I do now." Her voice softened, but stayed firm. "You embarrassed me in front of strangers. You made me feel small for doing my job. And you can't undo that with money or PR campaigns." "I know," he said. "That's not what I'm here for." "Then why are you here?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because that moment ruined more than a deal for me. It ruined the image I had of myself. I thought I was a leader, but if a leader can't treat people with decency, he's not leading anything." For the first time since she met him, Danielle saw sincerity in his eyes. Not pity, not guilt, but something closer to understanding. "I can't expect forgiveness," Preston said quietly, "but I wanted you to hear it from me, face to face. I'm sorry, Danielle." She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said softly, "You should apologize to your employees too. They've been watching how you treat people. You want to fix something? Start there." He nodded. "I will." Danielle turned away, but not before adding one last thing. "It's never too late to be better. But you've got to mean it." Preston left the restaurant without any cameras, without reporters, just a man walking into the night, carrying the weight of his own reflection. When he got into his car, he sat for a long time before starting the engine. For the first time in his life, the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like clarity. But forgiveness isn't handed out like money. It's earned, one act at a time. It took months for the noise to fade, but when it did, something unexpected remained. Change. Preston didn't disappear from the public eye. He stayed, faced it, and rebuilt. Not the empire, not the image, himself. He started small. He walked the floors of his own company, talking to employees by name instead of title. He donated quietly to staff hardship funds. No cameras, no press releases. When the janitors and cafeteria workers passed him, he didn't just nod. He asked how they were doing. Some thought it was performative at first, but over time they saw it wasn't. He meant it. And one crisp morning at the company's annual meeting, Preston stood on stage without a script. "I once believed respect came with success," he said to the crowd. "I was wrong. Success without respect is failure in disguise. I learned that the hard way, and I deserve to." The employees didn't cheer. They just listened, and that was enough. Meanwhile, Danielle's life had taken a quiet but beautiful turn. She no longer worked at the hotel. After the video went viral, a local community center reached out, offering her a position managing hospitality training for young workers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She still lived in the same apartment above the laundromat, still made pancakes for Tyrese on Sundays, but something in her had shifted. She'd found her voice. The world had seen her strength, not because of what she said, but because of what she refused to become. One afternoon, she got a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a simple note. You were right. I started where you told me to, inside my own walls. Thank you. It wasn't signed, but she knew who it was from. She smiled, folded the letter carefully, and tucked it into her Bible, between verses about humility and grace. Out in the world, the story of the coffee that cost $3.5 billion became more than a headline. It turned into a lesson taught in leadership seminars, in classrooms, and in quiet dinner conversations about power, pride, and respect. Some said it was karma. Others called it fate. But Danielle knew what it really was. A reminder that words can build or destroy, that dignity is worth more than dollars, that you never know who's watching when you decide what kind of person you're going to be. Preston eventually earned back some of what he lost. Not all of it, but enough. And when he passed by a waitress holding a tray one afternoon in a small cafe, he stopped, smiled, and said, "Take your time." The waitress nodded, surprised. She had no idea who he was. But maybe that was the point. Respect doesn't need an audience. It just needs to be real. If this story teaches anything, it's this. You never lose by showing kindness. No matter your status, your paycheck, or your title, how you treat people defines you more than what you own. The world doesn't remember the billion you made. It remembers the moment you decided to be human. So before you speak, before you react, before you judge, choose respect. Because in the end, that's what's really worth something.